You didn't get here by mistake. No matter what you were doing a few minutes ago, no matter what brought you to this message, none of it was casual. When awakened consciousness begins to move within you, it creates paths that seem like coincidence, but they are not. You were led here because something within you had already called for this exact experience, for this exact word, for this exact vibration. The universe called you here for a reason, and that reason is much greater than watching a video, listening to a message, or seeking inspiration. The reason is this: you are ready to remember who you are. You are ready to stop living as someone who watches life happen and start living as someone who knows they create everything they see. You are ready to stop accepting reality as a final decree and start treating it as the delayed reflection of your imagination. You are ready to stop asking and start commanding. And make no mistake, only those who have endured enough, suffered enough, grown tired enough of the old way of living reach this point, finally saying, "Enough. I want something new. I want what is mine by right." And when that sincere desire forms within you, the universe responds immediately. The money you seek, the change you long for, the impulse you feel within your chest. All of this is not a request you make to the universe, but a call the universe makes to you. Remember what you are. Abundance is not a prize for the few. It is everyone's nature. Most just forgot. They forgot because they got distracted by bills, deadlines, fear, scarcity, opinions, failures, comparisons. They forgot because they thought their identity was what the world said it was, not what their consciousness creates. You forgot because you were busy surviving, and surviving makes a lot of noise. But the truth never left you. It merely waited in silence until you were ready to listen again. And here you are. The time has come. The universe called you. Here for a reason, because you have finally reached the point where your inner change is worth more than your external justifications. You didn't come here to seek money. You came to seek the consciousness that attracts money. You didn't come here to seek miracles. You came to seek the state that produces miracles. And when you change your state, everything around you changes, because nothing can resist the conviction of a mind that remembers its origin. You are here because your old identity no longer fits you. It's tight, it's suffocating, and something within you begs for expansion. This is the moment you stop being an observer and return to being the creator. This is the instant you abandon the role of victim of circumstances and assume the role of the one who dictates circumstances. And that's why this message found you now, because you are ready to stop reacting to the world and start commanding it. Because you are ready to assume the state that brings money, opportunities, open doors and paths you never even imagined possible. Because you are ready to receive today, not because someone will give it to you, but because you will finally allow it. You have been called, and when the universe calls, it is because something has already been prepared. From this moment, everything changes within you, and what changes within changes everything around. This is where your abundance begins. This is where you come home. This is where you remember. Everything already is, and it is within. It is natural for the mind to want to resist this truth at first. It looks at what you are living today, observes your bills, your limitations, your losses, and tries to convince you that this is real, that this is who you are. But everything you are living now is merely an old echo, the consequence of internal states you maintained without realizing it. Nothing around you is new. Nothing just appeared. Everything is a shadow, and a shadow has no power of its own. A shadow merely repeats what the light of your consciousness projected previously. When you truly understand this, not just intellectually but emotionally, you see that there is nothing to fight in the physical world, because the physical world is incapable of initiating anything. It only responds. It's like walking into a movie theater and trying to modify the film by touching the screen. You can shout, complain, beg, fight with the image, but nothing will change until you go to the projection room and change the reel. Your life works the same way. What you are living now is the old film, the old reel of your consciousness. If there is scarcity, it is because there was a period when you accepted thoughts of lack, worry, fear. If there are obstacles, it is because you assumed them internally before they appeared in the world. People's mistake is trying to alter the projection instead of altering the source that projects. They want to change the shadow when the shadow merely obeys. And this is not to blame you, it is to liberate you. Because if everything is a consequence of your past states, then nothing in the present can imprison you. You are not condemned to repeat anything, simply assume a new state, and the shadow will inevitably change. There is no way the physical world can resist the command of consciousness. That's why Abdullah always said, never fight conditions, assume the state. The condition is old, the state is new. The condition is effect, the state is cause. The condition is inert, the state is creator. When you start accepting this as a law, and not as a beautiful idea, you stop despairing in the face of circumstances. You look at the current reality with the serenity of someone who knows it has no choice but to transform. You begin to act with the tranquility of someone who already knows the end of the film. Because you know, if you change yourself, everything around you will necessarily have to change. There is no exception. External reality has no will of its own. It is malleable, plastic, obedient. If you maintain a state of lack, it bends to lack. If you maintain a state of abundance, it bends to abundance. The world does not create your state creates the world. And that's why, instead of seeking signs, you should become the sign. When you change your state, your life inevitably changes. It may take a few days for the shadow to organize itself, but it always obeys. Always. The first step is simple, yet powerful. Stop treating what you see as a truth. Start treating it as a reflection. And by doing so, you reclaim the power that has always been yours. This is where transformation begins. This is where money, opportunities, and open paths begin to move in your direction. Because you changed the cause, and the effect has no choice. Imagination has always been the door through which the future enters, but few use it consciously. Most people imagine without realizing they are imagining, and thus create without realizing they are creating. They spend the entire day repeating internal scenes of fear, failure, debt, humiliation, scarcity, and then are surprised when the external world confirms exactly what they silently fed. Nothing in the universe is more faithful than the human imagination. It does not fail, does not rest, does not question, it merely produces. And it will always produce according to the state you maintain when imagining, never according to your words, your requests, or your speeches of hope. Imagination is the secret language through which God operates through you. That's why you cannot imagine yourself as poor and live as rich. You cannot imagine lack and reap abundance. You cannot imagine fear and expect open doors. Imagination is the mold that defines which reality you enter. Abdullah taught Neville firmly, sit down, close your eyes, and enter the final scene. It was not a suggestion, it was a command. Because he knew that the world does not respond to what you desire, but to what you assume as already fulfilled. If you mentally see yourself paying a debt, you reinforce the state of someone who has debts to pay. If you see yourself receiving unexpected money, you assume the state of someone who is already provided for. Everything depends on the scene you repeat, not once, but until it becomes so natural that you feel it as true, even without external evidence. Many say, I imagine, but nothing happens. But the problem is not with imagination, it is with the quality of the imaginative act. You don't just imagine with your mind, you imagine with emotion. It is emotion that seals the state. A person who imagines wealth while feeling fear is still imagining scarcity. A person who imagines opportunities while feeling doubt is still imagining failure. Imagination is the command, but feeling is the signature. Without it, the request is not sent. With it, the universe responds immediately. And this is where most fail. They imagine as spectators, when they should imagine as participants. It's not watching the scene, it's entering it. It's not seeing yourself receiving, it's feeling yourself receiving. It's not observing the change, it's inhabiting it. When you breathe within the scene, when you feel the texture of what you desire, when you savor the relief as if it has already happened, imagination ceases to be fantasy and becomes creation, and creation demands that visible reality bends. Do you want to receive money today? Then stop waiting for the world to bring it and start feeling that it has already arrived. Imagine the deposit, but feel the relief. Imagine the opportunity, but feel the certainty. Imagine the bill paid, but feel the gratitude. The physical world is slow, but imagination is immediate, and the world always catches up to what you sign internally. If you want to change your life, start by changing the inner film, because it is through that door that your future enters. It always has. It always will. Appearances will always try to convince you that they are the final truth. Always. Your bank balance, the pile of bills, the absence of opportunities, delays, silence, closed doors, all of this screams as if it has absolute authority, as if saying, this is how your life is, accept it. But none of this has a life of its own. None of this can decide who you are. The conditions you see today are merely photographs of what you believed yesterday, frozen images of states you once held and that have now lost the right to command your future. The mistake is treating them as decrees when they are merely materialized memories. When you look too much at appearances, you hypnotize yourself. You forget that everything that exists in the physical world arrived late. You forget that nothing before you is new. It's all past. You are seeing today yesterday's thought, yesterday's emotion, yesterday's fear, yesterday's assumption. How could this have power over your now? The truth is that appearance only dominates those who believe in it. Abdullah used to say, stop consulting the flesh. Flesh means the visible. The visible always lies, not out of malice, but because it's delayed. It only shows what has already been decided, never what is being created now. That's why, when you see a difficulty, you should not react as if it were permanent. Reacting is reaffirming, fearing is reinforcing, arguing is feeding. Every time you surrender to what you see, you prolong the shadow. But when you stand firm in your internal state, even with appearances screaming otherwise, you begin to dissolve the old reality, because it cannot survive without your attention. Appearance feeds on attention. When you withdraw it, it dies. The world changes when you stop looking at it as an enemy and start seeing it for what it truly is, an obedient mirror. It does not think, does not decide, does not evaluate. It merely reflects. So why fight with the reflection if what matters is the inner image? You can spend years trying to fix the exterior, but a single instant of inner change is worth more than 1,000 external efforts. When you abandon appearances, you abandon delay. You begin to live in the real present, the present that creates, not the present that repeats. And this is exactly where many people experience their first great leap. Because it's when you stop being scared by what you see and start relying on what you know. When you look at an empty bank account and think, this is old. When you see difficulty and think, this doesn't define me. When you see delay and think, this is already being replaced. That moment is a breakthrough. Appearance loses its power. And when it loses power over you, it loses power over your life. This is how the invisible begins to become visible. This is how change arrives. This is how you stop being commanded by shadow and return to commanding the light. Silent discipline is where many stumble because it demands something few are willing to practice. Permanence. Not permanence of physical effort, nor of struggle, nor of sacrifice, but permanence of state. Most people can even imagine something new for a few minutes, but quickly return to the old state when reality doesn't immediately change. They imagine today and undo it tomorrow. They believe for a few hours and doubt for the rest of the day. They plant a seed and rip it from the earth before it can germinate. And then they say that nothing works. But it wasn't the law that failed. It was the discipline that didn't exist. Discipline here is not rigidity. It is faithfulness to the new state. It is continuing to feel the desired reality even when nothing in the world confirms it. It is holding firm internally while the external still looks the same. It is gently maintaining what you have decided to be, even when conditions provoke you to return to your old self. It is a silent loyalty to your future, a confidence so profound that it needs no proof because the proof has already been accepted within you. True discipline is permanence. It is waking up and assuming the state. It is remembering it throughout the day, not as an effort, but as a natural return to what you have chosen. It is falling asleep in it every night, knowing that sleep is the most powerful time to consolidate a new reality. Neville learned this directly from Abdullah. Sleep in the desired state and the world will have no choice, because sleep seals everything. The sleeping mind does not argue, does not question, does not doubt. It simply accepts. And what it accepts, the world must reflect. This permanence does not need to be hard or heavy. It is gentle yet constant. You don't need to repeat phrases 1,000 times, nor force emotions, nor punish yourself for wavering. All you need to do is return, and return to the chosen state whenever you realize you've left it. This simple repetition over days is enough to rewrite entire destinies, because a state maintained with constancy compels the exterior to reorganize itself. There is no possibility of failure when there is permanence. The visible world, sooner or later, always yields. And when you practice this silent discipline, you start to notice something extraordinary. Things begin to move effortlessly. Doors that were closed open without explanation. People appear with opportunities you didn't seek. Money appears in ways you never imagined. Paths that were once blocked become simple. Not because you fought, but because you persisted. The universe responds to constancy, not to anxiety. It responds to the sustained state, not to the desperate plea. And when you remain faithful to what you have chosen to be internally, external reality has no alternative but to obey. Always. You no longer need to ask, beg, wait, or suffer for what you desire. Everything you seek already exists, is already ready, and is already available in the only place where creation happens, within you. The external world was never the obstacle. The obstacle was always forgetting your true position as creator. Now that you have remembered, there is no longer any reason to live as someone at the mercy of circumstances. There is no longer any room for the old, limited, fearful identity. You have already seen that everything that exists externally is merely a reflection of the state you assume as true. And if that is the case, then you are not bound to anything, absolutely nothing. Every possibility is before you, awaiting only your silent acceptance. Stop negotiating with the old reality. Stop reacting to what you see. Stop asking for external changes while internally preserving the same state as before. The universe can only respond to what you are, not to what you say you want. And now is the moment to be. Not tomorrow, not when the deposit comes in, not when opportunities appear, but now in this instant. Assume within yourself the posture of one who has already received. Feel the relief, the gratitude, the tranquility of one who already has. Enter the state and remain there. External reality, obedient as always, will follow you. Abandon the habit of begging for signs. You are not a creature seeking approval. You are the cause moving the universe. It is not the world that determines who you are. It is you who determines what the world must reflect. And when you command in silence with conviction, the universe responds without resistance. Everything bends to the assumed state. Everything reorganizes around the identity you sustain. Everything begins to flow in the direction of the one who finally remembers their inheritance. So from this moment, decide. Decide to be now what you wish to see manifested. Decide to walk as one who has already received. Decide to trust as one who has already won. Decide to exist in the end, because it is in the end that creation is completed. And when you do this, when you truly assume the position that has always been yours, you will see that nothing was far away, nothing was difficult, nothing was blocked. Everything was waiting for your consciousness to awaken, receive, today, now, internally. Because when you receive within, the world has no alternative. It merely confirms. You are sleeping with your eyes open. You walk the streets believing you are victims of mysterious forces, that luck decides who prospers and who fails. But I tell you, nothing, absolutely nothing happens outside of what has already been silently decreed within you. What you call destiny is neither luck nor punishment. It is merely the echo of what you dared or feared to accept as truth. The world you perceive is not solid. It is not fixed. It is an obedient shadow. It is a reflection. And a reflection never has a life of its own. It only responds to the form that projects it. You chase after external signs, plead for proof, beg for change like someone imploring for alms. But understand this: as long as you wait for the external to change first, you will remain trapped in the same cycle of repetition. Reality does not bend to the cry of the weak, but to the certainty of those who assume. It is not the eyes that confirm the truth. It is imagination, sustained with discipline. And here is the mystery few understand. There are words that, when used carelessly, seal your prison. You say, "I am," in a tone of defeat, in a tone of doubt, and you don't realize you are signing a sentence against yourselves. The universe does not argue with the conviction you affirm, it merely obeys. The divine frequency is not activated by lament, but by the boldness of living internally, as if it were already reality. Therefore, listen seriously, because what I reveal to you is not advice, it is law. It is not an opinion, but an eternal principle that governs kings and beggars, saints and sinners. The external world is a slave to the internal state. Whoever understands this awakens. Whoever rejects it will continue to wander, blaming chance for what they themselves silently decreed. The first principle is this: do not trust your eyes, for they are liars. The senses scream like false witnesses, pointing to scarcity, to illness, to rejection, and you believe them as if they were infallible judges. But what is visible is not the cause. It is merely the consequence. You can look at a tree full of fruit, but if you do not know the root, you do not understand where its strength came from. So it is with life. The circumstances you see are fruits, but the root lies in what you have silently accepted as truth. When you allow yourselves to be deceived by appearances, you become slaves to the reflection. But when you dare to deny the senses and maintain the inner vision, you assume the place of masters. Imagine a man who sees only an empty bank account. He despairs, tells himself, "I am poor, there's no way out." The world then returns to him exactly that sentence, multiplying signs of lack. Now imagine another who looks at the same account, but instead of bowing to the number, closes his eyes and affirms with conviction, "My wealth is already present. I already dwell in abundance." What will happen? The world, obedient as a servant, will move circumstances, people, and opportunities to confirm the inner state. It doesn't matter if it takes days or months. The law does not fail. The invisible always precedes the visible. When the scriptures say, "We walk by faith, not by sight," they speak precisely of this. Sight is deceiving. Faith is inner certainty. Whoever relies on the senses is like one who builds upon sand. The slightest storm brings them down. Whoever relies on the assumed state builds upon rock, because nothing external can undo what has already been sealed within. You must learn to disregard appearances, to laugh at contradictory signs, to deny the tyranny of the present. For the present, you see, is merely a shadow of an inner yesterday. Train yourselves for this discipline. When the body screams pain, do not accept it as a sentence, but as an echo. When your pocket cries scarcity, do not venerate it as a god, but as a fleeting reflection. When life presents rejection, do not assume it as identity, but as dust that the wind soon carries away. The secret lies in remaining firm in the inner vision, like one who knows the true cause has already been planted. Imagine yourselves as gardeners. If the seed has been sown in the soil, you do not tear up the earth every day to check. You water, you wait, and you trust. So it is with inner states. Plant conviction, water with discipline, and wait with serenity. The fruit is inevitable. Therefore, the first principle demands courage. The courage to close your eyes to the world and open the eyes of imagination. You need to learn to say within yourselves, "It doesn't matter what I see. What matters is what I assume." This is the key that separates those who create purposefully from those who live as victims. And then arises the second principle, as misunderstood as it is powerful. Understand that every word you utter is a seed sown in the fertile field of the mind, and none of them returns empty. Every word that comes from your mouth is a decree. There is no neutral word, no innocent thought. You have become accustomed to speaking just to speak, to repeating phrases of defeat like someone singing without thinking about the lyrics. But the universe does not distinguish between play and seriousness. It records, accepts, and returns exactly what you affirm. When you say, "I can't," you seal your incapacity. When you murmur, "Everything goes wrong for me," you sign your own sentence of failure. Words are invisible seeds, and the mind is soil that never refuses to germinate. Realize the danger in this. Many of you daily repeat phrases that sustain the prison in which you live. Look around. How often do you hear people saying the world is cruel, that life is hard, that they weren't born to win? What happens afterward? Life confirms it. Not because life is cruel, but because the law is exact. What you plant, you harvest. The problem is not the world, the problem is the negligence of the power of the word. When the scriptures say, "In the beginning was the word," they are not speaking of poetry, but of law. The word creates. The word is a creative seed. And if in the beginning it shaped heavens and earth, today within you it shapes destinies, relationships, health, wealth, or ruin. You can transform your mouths into a source of life or a source of destruction. You can seal miracles or seal prisons. Blame no one else. Every phrase you accept is a brick in the construction of your reality. And here is the calling. Guard your words as one guards treasures. Before speaking, ask yourselves, am I sowing what I wish to reap or what I fear to reap? If the answer is fear, silence is better. But if it is certainty, speak with authority. It is not about repeating empty formulas, but about assuming with conviction the word that already carries the life you want to live. When someone asks, "How are you?" and your body aches, resist the temptation to seal, "I am bad." Respond from within, not from the reflection, because every response is a brick, and sooner or later the house will rise. Remember this, the word does not act alone, it acts because it is pronounced with feeling. What you say with emotion is what is engraved most deeply. A complaint filled with anger manifests quickly. Gratitude pronounced with faith does too. Have you ever noticed how a curse spoken with conviction can traverse generations? Likewise, a blessing, when cast with certainty, can open doors that nothing external could open. Make no mistake, the external world does not choose for you. You choose every day by what you affirm, by what you repeat, by what you sustain in your heart. Guard your tongue like a sword, for from it can come both wound and healing. To live as if it already is. This is the third principle, and few have the courage to practice it. Most prefer to wait for money to arrive before feeling prosperous, to wait for the body to heal before feeling healthy, to wait for someone to love them before believing they are worthy of love. But this waiting is the soul's greatest poison, because one who waits declares in silence, "I don't have, I am not, it hasn't arrived yet." And the universe, obedient, confirms exactly that lack. You need to understand that the secret is not in reacting to what already exists, but in inhabiting the state before it manifests. It's like an actor who embodies a character. He doesn't ask if he already is, he simply assumes and lives it. The body adjusts, the mind adapts, and for a time, the character becomes so real that even the audience forgets it's acting. Such must be your attitude towards life. It doesn't matter if external reality screams scarcity, if the body cries pain, if relationships seem empty. You must inhabit the desired state, like one who wears an invisible garment, and sustains it until the world has no choice but to reflect it. Remember what is written. When you pray, believe that you have already received, and it will be yours. It does not say, believe that you will receive someday, but you have already received. The Creator's time is not future, it is present. If you want abundance, walk with the mind of one who already possesses it. If you want healing, carry within you the posture of one who is already restored. If you want love, live with the confidence of one who is already loved. The law does not distinguish between what exists in the invisible and the visible. For it, the assumed state is already reality. Of course, the natural mind resists. It whispers, "You are pretending, you are deceiving yourself." But understand, it's not about deceiving, but about commanding. The external world is a servant, not a master. You are not lying to yourselves. You are instructing reality about who you are. And this instruction must be firm, constant, unwavering. Imagine a farmer who sows wheat. He doesn't wait to see the grains sprout the next day to believe the harvest will come. He acts as if it's already certain, because he knows the earth never fails to return what it receives. So too with you. Act, speak, breathe, as if you are already living what you desire. Faith is the invisible seal that hastens the process. This principle is the watershed between those who merely dream and those who manifest. To dream is to wait, to manifest is to assume. And he who assumes sooner or later will see the invisible become visible, because the law knows no other response than obedience. The fourth principle is this: learn to read life as a great symbolic book. Nothing that happens before you is random. Every encounter, every word, every delay, every lost or gained opportunity is a reflection of what you have been silently sustaining within yourselves. But because you are asleep, you treat the signs as coincidences. There is no such thing as chance. Life is a faithful mirror of the state you inhabit. When you live in a constant feeling of rejection, notice how the world immediately plays that role. People distance themselves, doors close, opportunities slip away, and you say, "See, nobody values me." But you don't realize that the world merely obeyed the inner decree. On the other hand, when someone internally assumes they are worthy, loved, respected, the entire universe begins to conspire to confirm that state. Small gestures, glances, invitations, even strangers seem to recognize this new identity, as if there were a secret language operating behind appearances. The scriptures are full of symbols that speak of this law. Think of stories that seem like simple narratives, but which, in truth, are mirrors of inner states. The sea that parts is not just a historical fact, it is the image of resistance yielding before sustained conviction. The Promised Land is not a geographical territory, but the state of abundance already inhabited by faith. Everything you read outside is a reflection of what already exists within. You need to learn to interpret life this way, like one who deciphers signs. A stumble can be proof that you still carry haste or anxiety within you. An unexpected compliment can be confirmation that you have begun to inhabit a state of worth. A repeated obstacle can be a revelation that you still hold onto old beliefs. Nothing is trivial. Everything is a message. He who reads symbolically ceases to be a victim and becomes a student. He understands that life is merely reflecting his own inner posture. And when he sees a reflection he doesn't desire, he doesn't fight the mirror, he doesn't despair against the reflection, he changes the original image. This is the key. Change the inside to transform the outside. You have been trained to give more importance to external signs than to inner vision, but the true master looks at the world as at a dream. He knows that everything there is a projection. If the dream is dark, he doesn't blame the characters. He changes the consciousness that produces it. So it is with wakefulness. If life shows you scarcity, do not fight against it with despair. Assume within yourselves the state of abundance, and you will see the scenery change. This principle demands silence and observation. It requires you to stop reacting automatically and start seeing with eyes of interpretation. He who reads life symbolically awakens, because he understands that nothing is an enemy. Everything is a mirror. The fifth principle is the discipline of sustaining the chosen state, even when everything around seems to scream the opposite. This is where most fail because they give up too soon. You assume a vision for a few moments, feel the desired reality for a few minutes, but soon yield to the tyranny of the senses. The slightest contradictory sign is enough, and you return to affirming the old identity, like one who pulls a seed from the earth because they do not yet see the plant sprout. And then you complain, "The law doesn't work." No, the law did not fail. You simply lacked the courage to persist. The world is persistent in testing the firmness of what you declare. It places before you the same circumstances, the same obstacles, not to punish you, but to silently ask, have you truly chosen this new state, or do you still belong to the old one? And many, faced with the first contradiction, abandon their new position. But the master does not bend. The master persists. The master understands that the invisible always precedes the visible, and that the harvest is inevitable when the seed is watered with constancy. Remember, discipline is not just effort, it is sustained faith. It is refusing to return to the old self, even if the whole world seems to mock your conviction. It is acting like the farmer who knows, if I planted, it is done. He does not dig up the earth every day to check. He waters, waits, and trusts. So too with you. If you have assumed health, remain in that state even if the body aches. If you have assumed abundance, remain firm even when finances are tight. If you have assumed love, sustain it, even in the face of momentary rejection. Persist until the world, tired of resisting, bows before the certainty you carry. Discipline is the shield against illusions. It is proof that you truly know who you are, because anyone can imagine for a few minutes, but only those who persist shape destinies. You need to develop this inner fortitude, this firmness that is not shaken by contradictory signs. External reality is slow at times, but it always obeys. Always. Now I tell you, abandon the posture of beggars. Stop supplicating for external changes. Stop chasing after proofs. Assume, sustain, and command in silence. You are not at the mercy of chance. You are the invisible decree makers who move the scenery. Discipline is the sword that cuts doubt. It is the seal that compels the world to bow. And when you truly sustain the chosen state, nothing and no one can prevent its manifestation. You have come this far, heard each principle, and now you need to understand the seriousness of what has been revealed. Nothing in life is loose, nothing happens by chance. Everything you now call reality is merely the faithful reflection of what you have already accepted and silently sustained within yourselves. It is like a mirror. It does not create its own image. It only returns what is projected onto it. Many of you spend your lives fighting with the reflection, trying to forcibly change the external, without realizing that the true key has always been within. If you want to transform what you see, you need to change what you carry inside. This is the eternal law, and there is no exception. Look back and realize, every victory you achieved was first born as a silent certainty, even if for moments. Every defeat you experienced was also confirmed by an inner acceptance. You can deny it, you can blame circumstances, people, or even destiny, but that doesn't change the truth. Life only returns to you what you sustain as a state, and until you assume this responsibility, you will continue to repeat the same cycles, like prisoners walking in circles within their own cell, believing the bars are outside, when in fact they are within. Therefore, I tell you, stop begging, stop dragging yourselves through life as if you were powerless victims. Every time you wait for the world to change first, you confess that you do not believe in the power you carry, and this confession becomes a sentence. As you implore, wait, doubt, the universe merely responds, as you believe, so it shall be. Do you not realize you are creating the very prison you complain about? It is time to awaken from this illusion. You were not created to crawl, but to command. I speak not of arrogance, but of inheritance. The inheritance of a creator who has forgotten who they are and lives as a servant to circumstances that have no life of their own. I tell you firmly, nothing that happens externally is your master. Sickness is not a master, scarcity is not a master, loneliness is not a master. All these things are merely echoes, shadows that bow before the authority of one who dares to assume the opposite state. But for this to happen, discipline is required. Discipline not to bow to the senses. Discipline not to return to the old self. Discipline to hold the torch alight in the midst of the storm. You need to choose, and choose now. Either you continue as beggars, supplicating the reflection to return a different image to you, or you assume your position as conscious creators, silently and with certainty decreeing what you wish to see manifested. The law does not fail, but it demands courage. Courage to live as if it already is, even when everything seems to deny it. Courage to sustain the word of blessing, even when your lips want to utter complaints. Courage to interpret life as a symbol and not as a final sentence. And I tell you, if you dare to assume this path, you will see the impossible bend before you. Reality will move like an obedient servant, because it has no choice. It does not create, it merely responds. You are the cause, always have been, always will be. The only question is, what state are you choosing to sustain? There is no more time for postponements. Today is the day you stop begging and start commanding. Today is the day you stop chasing after signs and become the sign. Today is the day you remember that everything already is, and it is within. Assume with firmness, sustain with discipline, and prepare yourselves. The world will inevitably bow to the state you decree in silence and certainty. You are here because something within you called for this word before you even knew it would come. The algorithm did not err. Life does not err. What seems like chance is merely the reflection of an immutable law acting with precision. If this message found you, it is because you had already attracted it in silence, in a moment of searching, of doubt, or even of despair. It is not about privilege, but resonance. Only 0.1% of those who encounter this flow of information manage to align their heart, mind, and inner state in such a way that they recognize this call. And you are one of them. The visible world you observe every day is not the cause, it is the consequence. It is like the echo of a voice already uttered, like the shadow that cannot exist without the body that casts it. Many spend their lives trying to adjust the shadow, without realizing that the origin lies in the invisible. You did not attract this message because the world willed it. It was you, from the state you maintain, who called it into your experience. This is proof that the law is real. You need to understand life does not organize itself by external signs. Rather, external signs organize themselves according to your inner life. What you call destiny is nothing more than the sum of the states you have accepted as your own. What you call luck is merely the law's faithfulness in reflecting what you dared to imagine. And what you call failure is simply the result of having assumed states of limitation, even if unconsciously. This is why so few understand, and even fewer apply it, because it demands courage. The courage to abandon the easy explanation that things are just the way they are. The courage to accept that you are responsible for every detail that surrounds you. The courage to stop blaming, begging, and waiting, and to recognize that everything has already been determined by the state you chose to inhabit. This message did not come to massage your mind, but to prod your spirit and remind you that you are a creator. Today, you stand before a choice. You can hear these words as a distant echo and forget them in minutes. Or you can recognize them as the call of your own soul, a reminder that there is no error, no chance or limitation. The world is a mirror, and you are the reflection of what you dare to assume. You have come this far because something within you called for this word before you even knew it would come. The algorithm did not err. Nothing errs. What many call chance does not exist. Life moves in a mathematical, precise, inexorable way. You are hearing this because you had already attracted it in silence, in an unverbalized thought, in a hidden desire, in an uneasiness that seemed without an answer. This message is the reflection of your own inner state, and that is why only 0.1% of those who encounter this flow of information are capable of recognizing and accepting it. Not because they are better, but because they are ready. Understand a simple and powerful truth. Nothing you see externally is a cause. The outer world is merely an effect. It is a shadow. It is a reflection. You can spend your whole life trying to fix the shadows, but you will remain a prisoner until you touch the origin. The visible is always delayed. It is always the echo of something already decreed in the invisible. Therefore, when you despair over circumstances, you are merely fighting against a projection. And when you learn to assume states within your inner self, you realize you no longer need to beg for change. The world cannot resist the command of your interior. Many still believe that external signs determine their lives. They look at a lack of money and say, "I'm stuck. There's no way out." They look at a sick body and say, "Healing is impossible." They look at broken relationships and conclude, "I am rejected." But they forget that what they see has no substance of its own. It is merely the harvest of the state they accepted within themselves. The external sign is not the sentence. It is only the report. And whoever dares to change their inner state will see the report rewrite itself before their eyes. This is proof that the law is immutable. You did not attract this message because someone else decided. You attracted it because, at some point in your being, you already began to call for it. And here is the first principle, which needs to be etched in fire in your understanding. The invisible precedes the visible. Before something manifests in the world, it already exists as a silent conviction within. You have seen this happen in your own life. When you deeply believed something would go wrong, the error came with frightening precision. When you were certain, even unconsciously, that you didn't deserve something, you saw doors close. But also, in those rare moments when you dared to see yourself as worthy, when you allowed yourself to imagine yourself fulfilled, doors opened that you could never explain by logic. The invisible is the seed. The visible is the harvest. No farmer expects the earth to yield fruit without first planting. Likewise, no state can manifest without first being assumed. Most people live by asking for a harvest without planting a seed, expecting change without assuming a state, desiring signs without decreeing convictions. And so they spend their lives in cycles of waiting, always victims, always beggars of the external. But you are not here to repeat that cycle. This message reached you to remind you that nothing in the external world has independent power. Everything is a consequence. And if you understand and apply this first principle, if you have the courage to assume within yourself what you wish to see outside, then you will understand that the world is not against you. It is merely an obedient servant bowing before the state you maintain. What many still do not realize is that it is not about waiting for life to change before you feel different. The order is always the inverse. When you dare to feel now as someone who already possesses, life reorganizes itself around that state. It is like turning on a lamp in a dark room. The darkness does not fight, it simply disappears. This is how inner power works. It does not ask permission from the external world. It simply transforms it. Imagination is the silent tool that governs all results. It is not mere daydreaming, it is creation in its purest form. Every scene you maintain in your mind is like an order written into the invisible fabric of reality. Therefore, when you surrender to thoughts of defeat, you are writing decrees of failure. And when you dare to uphold the image of victory, even if circumstances scream otherwise, you are already shaping the victory that will come. Scripture itself is a constant invitation to this practice. When it says to call things that are not as though they were, it is not pointing to a distant ideal, but revealing the law by which everything happens. The invisible obeys the image held with faith, and the visible has no choice but to align. This is why the person within a vision walks in peace amidst chaos. They have already seen the completed scene within themselves. But note, imagining is not merely fleeting thought. It is inhabiting the scene with such naturalness that the body responds as if it were already real. It is feeling the relief of a paid bill, the joy of a reunion, the security of restored health, even before your eyes confirm it. And this feeling is the seed that will inevitably blossom. The world may seem resistant, but it is only a delayed reflection. The more faithful you are to the internal scene, the faster the reflection adjusts. There is no power in anyone outside of you. The only power lies in what you accept as truth within your innermost being. Many beg for approval, seek signs and wait for confirmations, but all of this is weakness. The Creator does not ask, they decree. They do not implore, they assume. And that is why so few experience real transformation, because they lack the courage to maintain an image contrary to what their eyes show. Now understand, what you imagine with conviction is not fantasy. It is an order. It is an invisible decree that reality is compelled to serve. The world cannot escape the image you maintain. If it is one of failure, failure will come. If it is one of glory, glory cannot be denied. And this is where your discipline begins. Staying faithful to what you choose to imagine, even when nothing around seems to confirm it. Everything you see around you is merely the confirmation of the state you inhabit. The money that comes in or its absence, the people who stay or leave, the opportunities that arise or disappear. None of this is random. It is the exact reflection of what you decided, consciously or not, to be within yourself. Life does not respond to what you desire, but to what you assume. And here is a key that few have the courage to accept. It is not effort that creates, it is the state. You can work tirelessly, move mountains, spend sleepless nights, and still reap scarcity if within you the state is one of lack. But someone in silence, who dares to feel prosperous before having any evidence, will see doors open without logical explanation. This is because the world is not governed by struggle, but by the inner position you choose to inhabit. This is the point where many get lost because they confuse action with cause. Action is merely a consequence. The true cause is the state that precedes it. The person who inhabits the state of a winner acts naturally like a winner, even before possessing external proof. And what they experience is not luck, but simply the inevitable response of the law. Therefore, when you insist on waiting for something to change externally before you feel different, You are reversing the order. It's like wanting your reflection in the mirror to smile before you do. It's impossible. The external only returns what you have already decided to be. One who sees themselves as rejected, even if they don't realize it, transmits rejection in every gesture, every word, every look, and life merely obeys. One who sees themselves as loved, even if alone, carries an atmosphere that attracts love effortlessly. Everything is a state, and a state is not just thought. It is feeling oneself, inhabiting oneself, carrying within oneself the conviction of already being. When you place yourself in that position, not as someone who imagines for a few seconds, but as someone who assumes an identity, the world bends before that choice. Reality does not resist someone who has already decided who they are. Now stop and observe. In what state have you been living? Not in the hours when you try to convince yourself, but in the silent moments, when you are alone, when your mind quiets. It is there that the decree lies. It is this state that governs every detail of your world. If it is one of fear, you will reap fear. If it is one of confidence, you will reap abundance. Life is too faithful to betray the law. Appearances are the greatest deception for those who are still asleep. Eyes show lack, show illness, show closed doors, and the average person despairs. They believe the visible is the final verdict. But the visible is nothing more than a delayed photograph of what has already been assumed within. It is like looking at the night sky and seeing a star that perhaps no longer even exists. The light that reaches your eyes is past, not present. So too are circumstances. They are nothing more than delayed echoes of states already chosen. When you understand this, a rare courage is born, because you realize you no longer need to bow before appearances. You can look at an empty bank account and in silence assume abundance. You can feel pain in your body and still inhabit perfect health within yourself. You can see doors closing and, without trembling, maintain the image that the path is already open. The world, sooner or later, will be forced to align. Those who live enslaved by appearances never know true freedom. They are always reacting. If everything seems good, they feel good. If something seems bad, they sink. They are leaves in the wind, without roots, without governance. But the awakened creator does not live this way. They do not ask appearances what they should feel. They choose to feel from their inner state, and it is the world that must obey. This is why the scriptures repeat, "Walk not by sight but by faith." Faith is not blind belief in something distant. Faith is the inner discipline of assuming the invisible as more real than temporary signs. It is looking at the shadow and not being deceived, because you know the substance is elsewhere. You have been called to abandon appearances, to not let yourself be manipulated by what your eyes show. The external world is like smoke. It seems solid, but it dissipates when you stand firm in what you have decided to assume. Do not fight against the visible. Simply do not feed it with your attention. Fixate on the chosen state, and you will see the scenario dissolve and reconstruct before you. And here arises the big question. Will you continue to be a slave to appearances, or will you have the courage to ignore them and live from the invisible? This choice, made in silence, is the watershed between those who keep asking for signs and those who create signs. This is where everything is decided, in inner discipline. Because it's not enough to merely glimpse the desired state for a few moments, feel a breath of hope, and then quickly return to fear. The world does not bow to fleeting desires, but to the persistence of one who upholds a decree. Discipline is the difference between one who dreams and one who creates. How many times have you started to imagine yourself prosperous, healthy, loved, and then quickly abandoned the scene because appearances screamed louder? It is at that moment that most give up, but one who understands the law perseveres. They close their eyes and return as many times as necessary to the chosen state. They refuse to be a servant to vacillation. They decide to be faithful to the invisible, until the visible has no alternative but to obey. Maintaining the state is not a physical effort, but a silent steadfastness. It is like a king seated on his throne. He does not need to raise a sword to prove authority. He simply is, and the entire kingdom organizes itself around that presence. So it is with you. When you assume the inner state with discipline, you don't need to chase after things, you don't need to beg, you don't need to fight. The world reorganizes itself, inevitably, around what you maintain yourself to be. This faithfulness to the invisible demands courage, because you will be tempted to yield to doubts, to external voices, to circumstances that seem to contradict your conviction. But remember, these contradictions are merely the last gasps of an old state dying. If you resist, if you remain steadfast, you will soon see the new reality blossom before your eyes. Inner discipline is, therefore, the final key. It is not about momentary intensity, but about constancy. It is not about desiring today and giving up tomorrow, but about remaining in the chosen state until it solidifies in the external world. Whoever practices this with faithfulness cannot fail, because the law does not fail. Now look within yourself and decide, will you continue to beg for external changes, or will you choose from this moment on to live as one who already possesses? Because the awakened Creator does not ask, they command. They do not wait, they assume. And all of life, like an obedient servant, bows before this certainty. You have reached the end of this message because something within you no longer accepted living as before. Do not be mistaken. This is not a coincidence, not chance, not luck. Only 0.1% are able to attract this word, because only 0.1% are ready to hear it without fleeing. And now, upon listening, you find yourself before a choice that will define every step of your life moving forward. Everything you have heard thus far is not a beautiful theory or a distant promise. It is law. It is eternal order. The external world has no life of its own. It creates nothing. It merely mirrors, with relentless perfection, that which you dare to assume within yourself. As long as you beg for signs, you will live as a servant. As long as you wait for something to change out there before changing within, you will be a hostage to appearances. But if you have the courage to reverse the order, to become king in silence, to assume the state before any proof exists, you will discover the secret that has always been before your eyes. Life is your servant, not your master. Think about what this means. The lack of money, the health that seems fragile, the relationships that hurt. All of this is merely a reflection of old states you nurtured, often without realizing it. They are not punishments. They are not injustices. They are just echoes. But just as an echo does not last forever, these reflections are also not eternal. You can now decree new states, and the echo will inevitably change. And here is the truth that many fear. No one else can do this for you. Not friends, not government, not religion, not family. You may have teachers, you may have guides, you may hear words that rekindle your flame, but the final decision will always be yours. It is you who chooses which state to inhabit. It is you who decides whether you will be a beggar of the external or a commander of the internal. It is you who determines whether you will continue as a victim of appearances or rise as a conscious creator. So, I ask, how long will you postpone? How long will you wait for an external sign to give you permission to assume what you already desire? How long will you live as one who watches life pass by when, in reality, you were called to create it? Today is the limit. This message arrived because you asked for it, even if in silence. And if it echoes within you now, it is because you are ready. Ask no more. Implore no more. Wait no more. Assume. Assume within yourself what you wish to see outside. See yourself already in the fulfilled state. Feel yourself already as one who possesses. Walk as one who does not doubt. And stand firm even if the world screams otherwise, because the world has no power to betray the law. It may delay, it may seem to resist, but sooner or later it will be forced to yield. From this moment on, stop begging and begin to command, not with shouts but with silence, not with anxiety but with certainty. Decree within your innermost being and rest. For one who knows who they are does not need to prove, nor convince, nor implore. They simply remain, and everything comes to them. If this message found you, it is because there is no more time for excuses. You belong to the 0.1% who are able to attract this word. Now live up to it. Live as a creator, not as a victim. Reign over the invisible and allow the visible to follow. Because there is no other path. The law is immutable, and it will always obey the state you maintain within yourself. Remember, nothing escapes imagination sustained with conviction. The entire world in silence awaits your commands. So command. Choose today which state you will inhabit. And do not let go. Because life has no alternative. It will have to bow before your certainty. You are the call. You are the decree. You are the living reflection of what you dare to assume. Now, assume it. And never again accept less than what is already yours by right.